surface. Your chair's there right next to you. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Jim Russell, and I'm the Secretary of the Board of Trustees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you have been with this congregation a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. We respectfully acknowledge the territory on which our building stands as the ancestral homeland of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. I have 3 announcements this morning. In the spirit of the 8th principle that we adopted last June, a number of us have been tuning in to a weekly discussion on Wednesdays at noon, organized by Reverend Lane Cobb and Reverend Eugene Holden. The link to the discussions is at the website racetalkrevolution.com. The discussions resume on October 20th. Daria Gregg and Ginny Stillman are leading our UUCHV team for the 1 mile or 3 mile walk to support the Harry Chapin Run and Walk Against Hunger. They will be walking this coming Saturday, October 16th at 10 o'clock at Croton Point Park. Please contact them and see the e-news about how to donate or sign up to walk. The email address for Reverend Josh for Joys and Sorrows was correctly printed in this week's e-news, but in past weeks it was incorrect. So when you email your joys and sorrows to Reverend Josh, if you wish to do it that way, it's Rev. Dr. Josh Snyder @gmail.com. Rev. Dr. Josh Snyder @gmail.com. For the most up-to-date information on congregation-related activities, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. The website is also the place you can find contact information for our staff, Board of Trustees, and other congregational leaders. And please join us for conversation after the service. If you're present in the sanctuary, you can join us in the parking lot. If you're watching the live stream, you'll receive a link at the end of the service for a Zoom virtual coffee hour. If you are just recently joining us and would like to receive our weekly e-news, please email us with your name and we will make sure you are added to our e-news list. We can also answer any questions you might have. Email us at uucroton@gmail.com or fill out one of the yellow cards in the back of the pews and drop it in the collection plate. For those of you here in the sanctuary, please silence your cell phones at this time. Once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley.
Good morning. My name is Ann Pearl and I'm your worship associate today. I would like to introduce our guest minister today, the Reverend Lane Cobb. Reverend Cobb is an interfaith minister, holistic coach, and co-curator of Race Talk Revolution, a virtual platform that provides a courageous and loving space for diverse communities to discuss the nuances of systemic racism, share their experiences, and promote anti-racist ideals and actions. Committed to elevating the social conscience, her goal is to provide a safe space where every voice is heard, every voice is appreciated, and every voice matters. Please welcome Reverend Cobb.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd just like to offer an invocation. Great Spirit, we come to you this morning asking for your blessing and mindful of the grace that has sustained us thus far. as members of a single human family, let us be present to the power of unity and the love we share one for another as we journey together in celebration and in worship. Amen.
Our chalice lighting today was written by Reverend Cobb. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the heart and the soul of every human being. It is the flame of the Spirit, sparked by mystery and nurtured by love. As we light our chalice, let us observe the beauty of our collective reflection in the eyes of those around us and celebrate the unity of our one human family. Now please join me in our Unison Affirmation. The words are printed in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice. Now is the time for joys and sorrows. Let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. If you have a personally significant joy or sorrow that you are willing to share, please come up to the microphone to my left, which is your right, and speak in it loudly and clearly so that even with your mask on, we can all hear you, especially those of us at home. The microphone will allow our friends watching virtually to hear what you're saying. I will light a candle for each. When you are done speaking, please use the center aisle to return to your seat. If you would prefer to have a candle lit without speaking, please just stand and I will light it for you.
Hi, I'm Ginny, and I have a couple of joys. One is to say that I've been listening for more than a year now to Race Talk Revolution, and I can't recommend it more. It's really been so inspiring and eye-opening. It's a great opportunity for us all. Secondly, I want to just say that I understand someone's having a big birthday, but not quite a real big one. This week, Leah Nelson. And my third is that years ago, I sang with Reverend Cobb's mother. She's a member of the Unitarian Church in White Plains. So we used to sing together in a group that disbanded and rebanded anyway. And she's also known quite well for doing cabarets, right? Yeah, her mom has a great voice. Anyway, so that's my connection.
I have a joy. I'm just really happy that Lane's here. I have also been going to her meeting on Wednesdays, and I feel like she's almost a sister to me right now. She's helped shape what I'm doing with my life right now and influence a lot of my actions in anti-racism. I feel like it's bringing me maybe away from this church a little bit because my time is really thin. I feel like I'm really busy, and that in a way is a sorrow, but I really feel like I'm doing what I'm called to do, and I thank Lane for inspiring me a lot.
Just two things. I want to say how much I adore Lane Cobb, and I know that I'm in really good company in this room today. So I'm pleased that she was able to come and join us today. Second is that next Saturday morning, Friday, a moving van comes to our house, and Saturday morning, Claire and I and 3 dogs leave for Ohio. So I said goodbye last week, but I'm here. Claire's not here because we have 2 lovely grandchildren at home, and she needs me to hurry home right after the service because they are a handful. But we love them very much, and we're having a great time. All of this is pure joy. Claire and I will continue to love you all and be part of this organization, formally at least for 6 months. At that point, we're going to decide where our commitment is in terms of the Columbus Church. Thank you.
We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those people who have yet to find a spiritual home where they too can share their joys and sorrows.
Our prayer for meditation this morning is a poem by famed African-American poet Langston Hughes. I dream a world. I dream a world where no man, no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream, my world.
Please join us now in a moment of silent meditation.
So, good morning again. So I'm going to say this is my first time speaking live to a group for in quite some time, and I happen to be nervous. I also just do want to let you know that though I might not have the most expressive face in the world, I am thrilled to be here with you all. In case you were wondering. I'm so moved by the generosity of spirit that is in this congregation and the generous words that have been shared about me and my platform, and just thank you for the opportunity to make an impact, and I'll do my best this morning. I want to thank you all for having me. I just also want to thank Reverend Dr. Josh Schneider for sharing the pulpit. My sermon is entitled, What is Ours to Do? Beloved Community in Action. And as you might imagine, there are a lot of possible answers to that question. I'm going to try to be succinct and deliver something that is meaningful. But I also would like you to join me in the inquiry this morning. The first half of the inquiry is what is ours to do in terms of the movement for racial and social justice. And the second half is what role does beloved community play in discerning and manifesting and maintaining those activities, whatever they may be. In other words, how does beloved community help us get to a place of purposeful and meaningful action? In 1966, Martin Luther King Jr. said that our goal is to create a beloved community. And this will require a qualitative change in our souls and a quantitative change in our lives. In my interpretation, King is asking in part for us to search our souls for what needs changing and then to get to work on ourselves and on each other and on our world. He is asking us to stretch ourselves to do the uncomfortable, or in the case of dismantling racism, the seemingly impossible, by joining together with our fellow human beings and being human together. In beloved community, we come together with our flaws and our foibles in tow, and our good intentions that can often go awry. In beloved community, we agree to treat each other humanely and compassionately, all the while acknowledging the human condition that sometimes makes it really, really difficult to do that. And by their doing, we can also create a place of belonging that feeds our souls and nurtures our intellects and stimulates our curiosity and supports our well-being, while we, humans all, grow together in ways that we just would not or could not do on our own. When my co-host Eugene and I started Race Talk, it was simply to provide a place of respite from the fallout following the tragic death of George Floyd. Eugene is also a minister. Before that, neither of us had been particularly vocal about social or racial injustice. It's not like we didn't care. We were just not doing or saying anything about it. And it wasn't like we hadn't been called. For many years by that time, Spirit had been urging me to start a conversation for healing the wounds of injustice, but I was afraid to do it alone. I had only met Eugene a few months earlier, and I still believe that Spirit set it up that way. Two quiet ministers who just want people to know how much they are loved and how valuable they are. Fed up with the horrors of the world, and even more fed up with our own silent complicity. Without his partnership, I doubt that Race Talk would be a thing. And I couldn't be more grateful to him, to Spirit, and to the folks who show up for those courageous conversations every Wednesday. But there have been times, because courageous conversations, as we know, are challenging. Pushing against systemic racism requires us, as King says, to examine and enhance the quality of our souls and elevate and expand the quantity of our actions. It requires that we develop our capacity to deal with the manifestations of internalized racial oppression that show up any time the word race is mentioned in this country. For white people, that means acknowledging the internalization of the white supremacy myth that can derail even the most well-intentioned anti-racists. For people of color, that means managing the emotional drag of internalized racial inferiority, the byproduct of centuries of inequitable, unequal, and inhumane treatment. We all have to stretch. Talking about and efforting against the plague of racism in this country is exhausting, and it's very, very uncomfortable. Mostly, when white people say they don't feel safe talking about race, what they mean is they're uncomfortable. When black people say they don't feel safe talking about race, they mean they don't want to have to deal with the consequences of white people's discomfort. For King, beloved community was the framework for the American ideal of liberty and justice for all. It is a place where we can risk being uncomfortable with each other so we can learn from each other and grow along with each other as human beings are meant to do. The tagline for Race Talk is "Your voice matters." And it does. Every voice matters. Whether we agree with it or whether we don't. And for integrity's sake, I can tell you that every time I hear myself say that every voice matters, I test myself to make sure that I'm telling the truth. Do I really mean that? Do I really mean that every voice matters? Yeah, I think I really do believe that. Do I want to necessarily hear everyone's voice? Not all the time. But it's not about me. It doesn't matter whether I want to hear it or not. The point is that every voice needs to be and deserves to be heard. People need to be heard. Because without dialogue, there is no relationship. This is part of the problem. We know this. We have forgotten how to talk to each other. Without conversation, there can be no community. And we are individually and collectively suffering the loss of civil dialogue and a common ground of understanding on which to build. So, at the age of 61, I'm new to organizing. And at the age of 61, I'm saying better late than never. The world has become so awfully noisy. Each of us is being called like never before to wake up and stand up and make our voices heard. And we need, beloved community, to help us answer that call. With the volume of activity and information coming at us all the time, finding what is ours to do can be an overwhelming process. Tragedies, crises, senseless acts of violence, one after the other, 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 pulling at our emotions with so much to feel bad about. We could easily go numb. When so much noise surrounds us, we might easily go deaf. And when it all becomes too much, when we most want to scream at the world to slow down and be quiet, we might just as easily go mute. This is dangerous. This is complacency, and complacency is not useful. This is not how beloved community is created. It is not what serves any of us. Complacency is complicity. Complacency serves the system, and the system is not humane. Beloved community, we know, requires action. It occurs when people of diverse backgrounds, orientations, and identities come together intentionally in an atmosphere of love and care and mutual respect for each other to make justice a reality. Now that's yummy, right? I've never met a UUer that wouldn't vote for that, right? We love warm and fuzzy beloved community. It's in our culture, right? It's in our principles. Our UU traditions are inclusive. We affirm the sacred nature of life, all of it. We stand against injustice in all of its forms. Man, I can't believe I got to grow up with that. I think you may agree that racism is certainly the most pervasive form of injustice that there is. I know many of you here today have participated in the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond's Undoing Racism workshop, and part of their message is that racism is the single most critical barrier to building effective coalitions for social change, and I support that assessment. Racism has been consciously and systematically erected. It will not go away organically. It must be consciously and systematically taken down. A monumental task that requires community. Again, we have to challenge the quality of our souls and expand the quantity of our actions so we can do it together. Despite my activist roots, activism has always scared me. I said earlier that without Eugene's partnership, race talk might not exist. And part of the reason racism still exists is fear, right? Fear of coming together, fear of the unknown, fear of retribution, fear of vulnerability, fear of being ridiculed, and fear of being just plain wrong. Nobody likes to be wrong. Have you ever set out to do something really, really good in the world? You're excited, you show up with your optimism and your enthusiasm, you're all set to make a difference, and then found yourself knee-deep in shenanigans that you weren't prepared for. How'd you feel about that? Did you feel inadequate? Did you feel like your identity was being challenged, maybe? Right? For many of us, that experience alone can cause us to doubt our ability to make an impact at all. Depending on who we are and how often that happens, it can cause us to completely withdraw. And we know that's not what we should do. But there are times when we may go blind to injustice because it's just too darn difficult to deal with. It's tiring, it's frustrating, and it hurts. Warriors for justice though we may be, we are still people. And people have limits. But guess what? Racism isn't tired. White supremacy isn't tired. Classism isn't tired. Sexism isn't tired. Ageism, genderism, all the other oppressive isms that subjugate people are not at all tired because they have been built to last, and every time we fail to push against an ism, we usurp our responsibility as human beings. And racism most of all because it is the most insidious and pervasive, and because it's the ism that trumps all the other isms. I was once asked to answer the question, if the whole world was listening, what would you say? Without hesitation, I answered, I would tell them to cut the crap. I would tell them to look to their left and look to their right. I would tell them to look into the eyes of whoever is standing next to them and try to see them not as the other, but as a person. Not as someone trying to steal or take advantage of them. Not as something to be feared, but simply as a person. I would tell them to look into that person's eyes and ask them what they want. And listen for their response. Perhaps you would indulge me, good people. Maybe we could do that right now. With your eyes open or closed, please imagine yourself standing with someone who is not like you in some way. It could be someone you don't agree with, or even someone you dislike. Now imagine yourself looking into their eyes and asking them the question, what do you want? Now listen to their response. I want decent housing. I want good food. I want my family to be safe and my children to be healthy and well educated. I want to do meaningful work. I want to be gainfully employed and financially secure. I want to feel good about my life. I want to make a difference. I want to feel like I belong. I want to be able to express myself and to feel like my voice is heard. I want to be understood and appreciated. I want to feel valued. I want to feel loved. Stay with that person for a moment and notice how it feels to be in the presence of another human being who wants exactly the same things you want. He or she is no different from you. Now, please imagine that it is you standing at the top of the mountain, with the whole world below you waiting to hear a word from you. UUC Hudson Valley, what words would you say? I have a beloved friend. We grew up together. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, pale white skin. I told him I'd be mentioning him today. He's a bit of an anarchist, maybe more than a bit. He loves his guns. He voted for Trump in 2016 because he was convinced that Hillary was going to take away his Second Amendment rights. When I told him about race talk, he advised me to stop wasting my time. He doesn't think racism is the problem society should be focused on. He thinks CRT proponents are stirring up trouble. He said he doesn't understand why people of color choose to live in blighted areas. He thinks he understands the history of our country. He believes that people in power have made some very poor choices, and he acknowledges that people have been hurt, but he has no idea of the true impact. he does know that he himself feels wounded. An intensely curious and highly distractible little boy. The public schools failed to provide him with a supportive learning environment, and he stopped going. He's still angry about that. He has a chronic illness, and he's unable to work. He feels like the healthcare and insurance industries have let him down. He'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. But he doubts too many people would do the same for him. He is not unlike many Americans, trying to make good choices, trying to be healthy and happy, trying to live a self-fulfilled life that makes a difference in the world. And like many Americans, he's frustrated. And sometimes he says things that I think are so idiotic that I have to leave my body to be with him. And yet, he is community for me. I claim him wholeheartedly because he offers me his humanity with open-handed generosity, and I accept it with gratitude. Do I like what he's saying? Of course not. Do I accept it? Yeah, I do. I accept that that is his lived experience talking. And I am a witness for it. And I thereby offer him an opportunity for healing. The true nature of humanity is to love and care for one another. But the oppressive structures of society have damaged each of us on every level of our being. And we pass on that damage to each other. For some, it's severe. For others, not so much. But it's there. And we must acknowledge that we have all been damaged by the oppression that has taken hold in this country from the beginning. Sometimes we hurt each other intentionally. We just do. But I prefer to think that often the hurt we do to others is out of ignorance. It's unfortunate that we can become so afraid of hurting each other and being hurt by others that we then avoid opportunities for real, authentic dialogue. Or we can become so inured to the pain that we just stop caring. Once again, the fear of vulnerability keeps us from making those critical, life-sustaining connections to our fellow human beings. And human beings are exactly who we need to be and be with. Vulnerable, loving, caring, concerned, curious, committed, compassionate, flawed, and absolutely divine in our incarnation, though we often forget about that part, much to our detriment. In fact, the survival of subjugative systems that plague this country rely on us forgetting. Our forgetfulness also serves the system. We are divine, yet so immobilized by fear, we have forgotten how badly we need each other to survive. Human beings need to be with other human beings, swimming around in humanity with each other, milling around in beloved community, having conversations that matter, holding vigils, proposing legislation, creating podcasts and watch parties and blogs to transform the racist ideologies that are tearing at the heart of our very divine humanity. We need to hold each other gently. We need to listen with compassion and keep doing the work to create a safe and loving space for humanity to show up. We need to educate each other. Those of us who know need to teach others who don't know yet. I will close by rendering once again the words of that prolific and courageous leader, Martin Luther King Jr., who, by the way, is not coming back, so we need to stop waiting for him. He said, "We have before us a glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of civilization. And that, beloveds, is what is ours to do. What is ours to do is to love each other in spite of ourselves, to find every opportunity to reach out to each other and call each other in. Start conversations. Show up at rallies. Call your political representatives. And if you can't do it or don't want to do it alone, join others who are already doing it, or ask other people to do it on your behalf, because sometimes people are just waiting to be asked. I didn't know that. Did you know that? People love community. And they'll do all kinds of things in community that they would never do on their own. And that is what is ours to do. Create beloved community through qualitative and quantitative change. We can no longer afford to hold on to our comfort if that means not fighting for the comfort of others. It's out of integrity for us to decide that once we acknowledge racism exists, that our work is then complete. It's not enough for us to know a lot and share a little or nothing. It is naive for us to believe that being good people is good enough. We have to get uncomfortable. We have to hold our nose and jump in. Whether we are ready or not, whether we want to or not, in beloved community, we can be and do more than we think we can. Please don't miss this call. Every voice matters. And the world needs to hear yours, and 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 ours. Thank you.
Each week we make an offering from the bounty that we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will also be shared with the UUSC in support of their efforts in the aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti, Afghan refugees, and New Orleans after Hurricane Ida. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. You may also scan the Q code in your order of service. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter. Please remember to give a little extra to compensate for the 3% surcharge, or, if you prefer, you can always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. The words can be found in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Now please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are also found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we depart this place of worship, let us carry within us the blessed flame of the beloved community that calls us not only to contemplative, qualitative challenge, but to quantitative action. May we be compassionate and courageous in thought and deed, and may the pull of complacency be less attractive than the commitment to building a world that works for absolutely everyone. Go in peace.